My girlfriend said I was too available and that it wasn't attractive, so I brought her sushi at lunch the next day and told her, "You're right, Sophie. Starting tomorrow, I'm a ghost." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I should have known something was wrong when she didn't even look up from her MacBook. Sophie Martinez had been my world for 2 years, and I'd been hers, or so I thought. But lately, she'd been treating me like an overeager puppy, rolling her eyes when I texted back immediately, sighing when I showed up with her favorite coffee. "Ryan, you need to understand," she'd said the night before, not even pausing her Netflix show. "Men who are always available aren't interesting. You're like a doormat." That stung. I'm a software engineer at a Miami tech startup, not some loser living in his mom's basement. I make good money, I'm decent looking, and I treated Sophie like a queen. Maybe that was the problem. My assistant Nina knocked on my glass office door the next morning. "Sophie's been calling," she said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her tablet, 3 times in the last hour. "Take a message," I said, not looking up from my code. Nina raised an eyebrow. She was sharp, ambitious, and had been trying to climb the corporate ladder since she started 6 months ago. "Really? You always drop everything for Sophie calls." "Not anymore. I'm unavailable now." The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was methodical. I stopped answering Sophie's texts within minutes. I started going to the gym after work instead of rushing to her apartment. When she called during my lunch break, I let Nina handle it. "Tell her I'm in meetings," I'd say, even when I was just eating a sandwich at my desk. By the end of the week, Sophie was confused. By the end of the second week, she was worried. By the third week, she was desperate. "What's wrong with you?" she demanded, cornering me at my apartment on a Friday night. She'd let herself in with the spare key I'd given her months ago. "You're acting like a stranger." I looked up from my laptop, where I was genuinely working on a client project. "I thought you wanted me to be less available." "I didn't mean completely disappear. Make up your mind, Sophie." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The old Ryan would have apologized, would have pulled her onto the couch, and promised to find the perfect balance between attentive and mysterious. The new Ryan just went back to typing. That's when she started getting sloppy. Nina came into my office the following Monday with a knowing smirk. "Your girlfriend's been busy," she said, sliding her phone across my desk. The Instagram story showed Sophie at the Palms, an upscale hotel bar downtown. She was laughing, leaning close to a man in an expensive suit. The timestamp showed it was from Saturday night, the same night she'd told me she was having a girls' night with her art school friends. "Who is he?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew this wasn't new. "Adrian Castellanos," Nina said. "I did some digging. He's a startup investor, married, drives a Tesla Model S, lives in Brickell. And according to his LinkedIn, he's been funding several local artists' projects." Including Sophie's, I realized. Her recent commission work, the fancy art supplies, the designer clothes she claimed were thrift finds. It all made sense now. "How long?" I asked. Nina's expression softened slightly. "Based on the social media breadcrumbs? At least 4 months?" 4 months. That meant it started right around the time Sophie began complaining about me being too available. The irony was sharp enough to cut glass. I leaned back in my chair, processing. The old Ryan would have confronted her immediately, would have demanded explanations and probably begged her to choose me, but I wasn't the old Ryan anymore. "Nina," I said slowly, "how do you feel about helping me with a special project?" Her eyes lit up with interest. "What kind of project?" "The kind that requires someone to be very, very unavailable." The plan started simple. Make Sophie realize what she'd lost by becoming everything she claimed to want. But as I learned more about her affair with Adrian, simple wasn't going to cut it. My old college friend Miguel ran a private investigation service in Miami. Over drinks at a South Beach bar, he handed me a thumb drive that contained everything I needed to know. "Your girl's been playing house with this guy," Miguel said, scrolling through photos on his tablet. "Fancy dinners, weekend getaways, even helped her set up that art studio space in Wynwood. Guy's been funding her whole lifestyle while you were bringing her sushi." The photos were damning. Sophie and Adrian at restaurants I couldn't afford, holding hands in hotel lobbies, kissing in the parking garage of his condo building. But the most infuriating part was how happy she looked, happier than I'd seen her in months. "Here's the kicker," Miguel continued. His wife has no idea. "Camila Castellanos comes from old Miami money, sits on 3 charity boards. She thinks her husband's late nights are all about work." I studied the photos of Camila, Elegant, sophisticated, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to, but first, I had my own reputation to rebuild. Nina proved invaluable in this phase. She started posting photos of me at networking events, always with attractive female clients or colleagues. Nothing inappropriate, just enough to suggest I was living my best life without Sophie. "Your ex has been stalking your social media," Nina reported after a week of this campaign. "She's been asking mutual friends about who you're with." Perfect. The real test came when Sophie showed up at my office unannounced. I was in a meeting with a potential client, a stunning woman named Isabella who ran a successful marketing firm. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Sophie in the lobby, her face flushed with anger. "Excuse me for just a moment," I told Isabella, stepping outside. "Who is that?" Sophie demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "A client," I said calmly. "Don't lie to me, Ryan. I know what this is. You're trying to make me jealous." I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "Sophie, you told me I was too available. I took your advice. Now I'm busy building my career and meeting interesting people." "This isn't what I meant." "Then maybe you should have been more specific." She grabbed my arm as I turned to go back into the meeting. "We need to talk." "I'm unavailable," I said, gently removing her hand. "Nina can schedule something for next week if it's important." The look of shock on her face was worth months of heartbreak. But Sophie wasn't done fighting dirty. She started showing up places she knew I'd be. The gym, my favorite coffee shop, even the building's rooftop bar where my company held happy hours. Each time she'd try to corner me, demanding to know who I was seeing, accusing me of cheating. The irony was delicious, but I needed something bigger, something public. The opportunity came in the form of an art gallery opening in Wynwood. Sophie had been talking about this event for weeks. It was supposed to be her big debut, showcasing pieces from her new collection, the same collection Adrian had been funding. I arrived fashionably late, with Isabella as my date. She'd agreed to help after I explained the situation, finding the whole thing amusing. We looked good together. I'd invested in a new suit, and Isabella wore a dress that cost more than Sophie's monthly rent. Sophie spotted us immediately. I watched her face cycle through confusion, hurt, and rage as we moved through the gallery, admiring artwork and making small talk with other attendees. "Ryan?" She appeared beside us as we examined a particularly abstract piece. "I didn't know you were coming." "Isabella wanted to see local artists' work," I said smoothly. "Sophie Martinez, meet Isabella Reyes. Sophie is an old friend." The word friend hit its mark. Sophie's composure cracked slightly. "Actually," Isabella said with perfect timing, "didn't you mention this was your ex-girlfriend's showing? The one who said you were too available?" Sophie's face went white, then red. "Excuse me?" I shrugged. "You did say that. Turns out you were right. Being unavailable has opened up so many new opportunities." Before Sophie could respond, a commotion erupted near the gallery's entrance. A woman in an elegant black dress was making her way through the crowd, her heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete floor. Camila Castellanos had arrived. I'd made sure she knew about the gallery opening, mentioning in a carefully crafted email that her husband was a patron of local arts and might be interested in attending. What I hadn't told her was that Adrian would be here with his mistress. The confrontation was everything I'd hoped for and more. Camilla spotted Adrian near Sophie's main display piece, his hand possessively on Sophie's lower back. The gallery went quiet as she approached, her voice carrying clearly across the space. "Adrian, darling," she said, her tone ice-cold. "I thought you said you were working late tonight." Adrian's face went through the same color changes Sophie's had moments before. "Camilla, I can explain." "I'm sure you can." Her gaze shifted to Sophie, taking in the intimate positioning, the guilty expressions. "And you must be the artist my husband has been so generously supporting." Albertson's Sophie, to her credit, tried to play innocent. "Mrs. Castellanos, I'm Sophie Martinez. Your husband has been wonderful in helping local artists." "I'm sure he has," Camilla interrupted. She pulled off her wedding ring and threw it at Adrian's feet. "Consider your patronage of the arts officially terminated." The ring bounced off the concrete with a sharp ping that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. Then Camilla turned and walked out, her dignity intact even as her marriage crumbled behind her. Adrian scrambled after her, leaving Sophie standing alone next to her artwork, the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Whispers started immediately. Miami's art scene thrived on gossip, and this was the juiciest scandal in months. I felt Isabella's hand squeeze my arm. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," she whispered. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Okay. As we left the gallery, I made sure to stop by Sophie's display. Beautiful work, I told her, loud enough for nearby people to hear. I hope you find another patron soon. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. The woman who'd called me too available, who'd been cheating on me for months while I brought her lunch and worried about her happiness, deserved everything she was getting. Outside, I pulled out my phone and texted Nina. Phase 2 complete. Time for Phase 3. The real fun was just beginning. Adrian made the mistake of threatening me in the parking garage after the gallery disaster. I was walking Isabella to her car when he appeared, drunk and furious. "You son of a bitch," he slurred, grabbing my shoulder. "You planned this whole thing." I turned slowly, keeping my voice calm. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb. You invited my wife to humiliate me." Isabella stepped back, pulling out her phone. Smart woman. "Your wife deserved to know what kind of man she married," I said. "Just like I deserved to know what kind of woman I was dating." Adrian swung at me, but alcohol had made him sloppy. I dodged easily, and his momentum carried him into his precious Tesla. The side mirror cracked against his shoulder. "Careful," I said, pulling out my keys. "Wouldn't want to damage your ride." I dragged the key along the driver's side door, creating a long, deep scratch in the pristine paint. Consider it abstract art. "You're insane," Adrian shouted, but he didn't try to hit me again. Bullies usually backed down when confronted by someone who wasn't afraid. "I'm unavailable," I corrected, walking away. "There's a difference." Nina had filmed the entire encounter from her car. I'd asked her to follow us, knowing Adrian might try something stupid. By morning, the video was making rounds on Miami social media, with Adrian looking like a drunk fool while I remained calm and composed. But my real masterpiece was still to come. Sophie had been calling non-stop since the gallery incident. She'd lost her patron, her reputation in the art world was damaged, and now she was facing the reality of actually paying her own bills. The studio space Adrian had been funding? Gone. The fancy art supplies? She'd have to buy her own. When she finally cornered me at a coffee shop near my office, she looked desperate. "Ryan, please," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "We need to talk." "I'm meeting someone," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "I know you're angry, but you don't understand the whole situation." "I understand perfectly. You were bored with me, so you found someone more exciting, someone who could buy you things I couldn't afford." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Sophie? Explain to me how cheating on me for 4 months was actually about me being too available." She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone. Maybe she'd never existed at all. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "Adrian was just... he made me feel special, important, like my art mattered." "And I didn't?" "You were always there, always waiting for me to text back, always ready to drop everything. It felt suffocating." I finally looked at her directly. "So you decided to suffocate someone else's marriage instead. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, closing my laptop. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been breaking up with me before you started fucking your sugar daddy. Fair would have been honest communication instead of making me feel like I was crazy for wanting to spend time with my girlfriend." Other customers were starting to stare, but I didn't care. "I loved you, Sophie. I would have done anything for you, but apparently that was the problem." She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. "I love you too. We can fix this." I pulled away. "No, we can't. Because I'm not available anymore. Not for you, not for this relationship, not for any of your drama." I stood up, gathering my things. Lose my number, lose my address, find someone else to be your emotional support system while you figure out what you want. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. "You'll regret this, Ryan. You're making a huge mistake." But I wasn't the one who'd made the mistake, and I definitely wasn't done making her pay for hers. The final phase of my plan required patience. I'd already destroyed her affair and damaged her reputation in the art world. Now I needed to show everyone, including Sophie, exactly who I'd become. The Miami Tech Gala was the perfect venue. As a rising star in the local startup scene, I'd been asked to present an award for innovation. It was a chance to address the entire community that had watched my relationship with Sophie implode. I spent weeks crafting my speech, working with Nina to ensure every word hit its mark. We practiced in my office, refining the timing, the pauses, the subtle digs that would land without being obvious. The night of the gala, I arrived alone, wearing a custom-tailored tuxedo that cost more than Sophie's monthly rent. I'd been working out religiously since our breakup, and I looked better than I ever had. Sophie was there, of course. She'd managed to snag an invitation through her art world connections, probably hoping to network her way back into relevance. She wore a dress I recognized, one Adrian had bought her months ago. Adrian was notably absent. Word around town was that his divorce was getting ugly, and Camilla's family money came with expensive lawyers. When my time came to speak, I walked to the podium with confidence I'd never felt before. The spotlight was bright, but I could see faces in the crowd. Colleagues, clients, friends, and enemies. "Good evening," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "I'm here to talk about innovation, but first, I want to share something personal." The room quieted. This wasn't the typical corporate speech they were expecting. 6 months ago, someone told me I was too available, that being responsive, reliable, and present made me unattractive, so I decided to innovate. A few chuckles from the audience. I could see Sophie near the back, her face pale. I learned that being unavailable isn't about playing games or manipulating people. It's about valuing yourself enough to set boundaries. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are precious resources. More nods from the crowd. I was hitting my stride. The most successful innovations come from identifying a problem and creating a better solution. My problem was that I was giving away my most valuable assets, my loyalty, my trust, my love, to people who didn't appreciate their worth. I paused, letting the words sink in. So I became unavailable to those who took me for granted, and incredibly available to those who valued what I brought to the table. The results have been transformative. The applause was building, but I wasn't finished. Tonight, we're celebrating innovation in technology, but the greatest innovation any of us can make is in ourselves. Know your worth, set your boundaries, and never, ever be available to people who don't deserve your time. The crowd erupted in applause. As I stepped away from the podium, I caught sight of Sophie pushing through the crowd toward the exit, tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't done fighting. As I made my way to the bar, she intercepted me, her composure completely shattered. "How dare you?" she hissed, grabbing my arm. "That whole speech was about me." "Was it?" I asked innocently. "I thought it was about innovation." "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I shared my journey of personal growth. "If you feel humiliated, maybe that's something you should examine?" She raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist easily. "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "You've caused enough scenes." "You think you're so smart," she spat. "You think you've won something, but you're still the same pathetic man who brought me sushi every day." I smiled, releasing her wrist. "You're right about one thing. I did think bringing you sushi was love. Now I know it was just enabling someone who didn't deserve my attention." "You'll never find anyone better than me." "Sophie," I said, pulling out my phone. "I already have." I showed her the screen, a text conversation with Isabella, who'd been traveling for work, but was flying back to Miami specifically to see me. The messages were warm, flirty, and showed genuine interest from a woman who had her own successful career and didn't need me to fund her lifestyle. Sophie's face crumpled as she read the messages. "This is all fake. You're just trying to hurt me." "I'm not trying to do anything to you," I said, putting my phone away. "You're not my problem anymore." Security had noticed the commotion and was heading our way. I straightened my bow tie and smiled at the approaching guards. "Everything's fine here," I told them. "Ms. Martinez was just leaving." As they escorted her toward the exit, she turned back one last time. "You'll regret this, Ryan. When you're alone and miserable, you'll remember what you lost." But I wasn't going to be alone or miserable. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, unavailable to the wrong people and completely open to the right ones. I walked out to the hotel balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay. The city lights reflected on the water, and I felt a peace I hadn't experienced since before Sophie told me I was too available. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Boss, you were incredible up there. The whole office is talking about it." Another message from Miguel. "Saw the video online. You destroyed her without breaking a sweat." And finally, one from Isabella. "Just landed. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. That speech was amazing." I smiled, looking out over the water. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building a life so good that their absence becomes a gift. I was no longer too available for people who didn't value me, and I was completely available for those who did. The old Ryan who brought sushi and apologized for caring too much was gone. In his place stood a man who knew his worth and wasn't afraid to demand others recognize it too. Sophie had wanted me to be less available. Mission accomplished.